I'm just gonna turn off my camera so we are more it's more fluid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you still hear me though?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Okay, well, let's start. Let me just try, because I see it's in low frame rate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna lower the resolution so maybe it's more fluid.
Looks
Okay,
good to me.
it should be better now, I think.
Yeah. Cool. Well, maybe we can start talking about the game as we're playing.
Yeah.
What you guys just witnessed is the tutorial section, so us running through that really dark, kind of rotting, um, mold-filled brutalist bunker. That's kind of like the onboarding for the game. And there was some text in there too, which maybe wasn't super legible given the quality of their stream, but the kind of premise I would say that shaped the idea or the concept behind the game Small Void and the mechanics is this concept in black hole studies and cosmological evolutionary theory, which basically argues, it's called the, let's see, the fecund universe theory, or cosmological natural selection. And it basically suggests that anytime a black hole is created or evaporates, which just means that it disappears, the universe actually evolves. And as is pretty common in physics, like theoretical physics, many theories are kind of nested inside of each other and on top of each other. And this theory ties in with this thing called the black hole information paradox, which suggests that every black hole is basically like an archive of information about everything that's ever happened in the universe. So like a library, it can kind of store this information, package it up, encrypt it perfectly, and then as the black hole is born and dies, this information is kind of shot out across the universe. So we were really interested in this question of like, where does that information go? Especially when you start thinking about quantum physics, which again at CERN is a pretty big research point. Oh wow, we found each other already. That was speedy.
That was fast. Oh no.
Interesting. I wonder if like all of the yapping was like a subliminal way for us to find each other. But actually, this is good because then we can kind of go through the tutorial again and explain a little more. Also, John, I mean, I think it would be awesome for you to say a word or two about the black hole kind of in between space, like after tutorial, but pre-volcano.
Yeah, we basically wanted like Solo's art to, put some graphics element to design because it can be not going in the same direction. And here for a tutorial, we really needed like a self-contained space. But we also wanted, Alice, you wanted the tutorial at first to be a fight, which is not right now, I think. But we kept this idea of the other being kind of a creepy being beyond the black hole. I think this state, like the other, is strange here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think our references for the tutorial level were like environment design. We talked about annihilation a lot. And I mean, as a film, it's really stunning, like the environment design, but also the premise of it, like a landscape that kind of has its own agenda, a world that has its own sort of sentience and doesn't really care if humans live or die. Everything is kind of in this partial state of decay and respawning. So yeah, I think it was kind of nice to have a space that has these sort of bizarre, like fractal type molds, like slime molds kind of growing on the walls, or like a big jawbone. Again, also spawning like spores and mushrooms and stuff on the floor.
Also, I think we didn't want to go to an out of spacey aesthetic.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the obvious solution. And so the noisy black hole aesthetic makes a lot of sense with the interior. That's I'd say the same vibe of the film Annihilation.
Also, I mean, given that you're basically playing as matter and antimatter, so kind of like two beings that are so close to being the same thing, but something is just a hair off. You're really playing on the level of the particle scale. So the graininess of the black hole scene that's going to come right after this tutorial kind of hints towards this idea of like particular being. Also, it's just really pretty. We're not above aesthetics here. Should we go for it?
Yeah. I think. Oh, okay. But I think I sent mine. Send yours. Oh yeah. Okay. That was mine.
Yeah, there's this really nice bleed into that black hole level. And yeah, I mean, definitely something we struggled with was like, how do we have the black hole in here as an environment, but not make it super gimmicky or like dorky? How did you end up doing this? I'm curious. Especially the reflection.
You mean the effect?
Yeah.
Yeah, the effect. Well, when you on your draft, you told me about the other being this almost uncanny, creepy being, and I don't know. I went. It was kind of an experimental shading approach, where I just played with the black hole shader, and I had actually it was a technical limitation where the accurate black hole rendering, because we used an asset that's kind of accurately rendering a black hole inside of Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
And it was really bad for performances. So I made my own refraction shader, like you can see here. And by playing with it, I got this super weird and noisy refraction. And it was actually way more relevant for the project to have this. Makes more sense.
It's really, really beautiful. Also, one thing that the people in the audience definitely can't feel is the haptic component. That's something that John and I are still working on, so it's going to be developed more. Oh yeah, this is just some text that explains Hawking's radiation paradox, which is exactly what happens in the game. Matter and antimatter split on the edge of a black hole, or the event horizon of the black hole, which we just tumbled through. And in Hawking's radiation paradox, which explains kind of why there's more antimatter than matter in the universe, basically one of the two, whether it's matter or antimatter, falls into the black hole, and the other one gets shot back into the universe. And that kind of creates this cosmic rupture where there's no way for those two particles to find each other again immediately and re-annihilate, which basically just means like when matter and antimatter meet, they merge, but explosively. Like everything just kind of blows up, and it's a total state change of energy out of the body that these two beings were once in, or these two states of matter were once in, and into some like much more chaotic, frenetic energy. I would say that during my time at CERN, all of these paradoxes, theories, research into the origin stories and ways that the universe grows and evolves, to me, just read more and more like relationship stories. So, yeah, when we talk about this game as a sort of dating sim, or we talk about finding each other on the edge of a black hole and re-annihilating, there's kind of a lot of like romance and heartbreak built into some of the mechanics, even if they're hyper technical and hyper scientific also, you know. There is also just this kind of a lot of feeling, I think, in the game, like trying to find each other, like seeing each other's shadows like up on the sky, like big giants, like not being able to communicate with language, so having to use this echolocation mechanic, which I'm sure John can say a lot more about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to maybe pitch a bit more about the game design and how all the scientific and artistic inventions translated into game design. And I'd say this game is mostly a knowledge-vania. Knowledge-vania is I think the most known game is Outer Wilds. It's a game where you actually kind of the goal of the game is to make sense of the mechanics. So you don't know anything about anything in the game by playing it. The goal is just to understand what this weird interaction is doing. And I think it's beautiful because it's both illustrates the scientific elements, but also the narration about a love story. It's kind of when you happen to know someone at first is it's very enigmatic, and the more you interact with a person, the more you understand them. And kind of the same in this game. Like for example, what are those giants? You don't know at first, but the more you look at them and you know how they you try to understand them, the more they make sense.
Right. Yeah.
So and actually maybe I don't think we talked about the echolocation,
No,
which
no.
are the giants actually. Maybe we can talk after that about the echo report on the satellites. But yeah, the giant, it's just this thing about stars that when you look at them, you see them from a very long past, and it's the same here. You see traces from the past of the player, so about its location.
The other
And to
player.
make
So you're seeing my movements,
yeah,
but in the past.
yeah. And to make the game a bit harder, it's actually offsetted. So it's from the past and offsetted, which actually happens also in space with the gravitational waves, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It creates an offset of what you're looking at in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
It's currently in the work, but when you touch the giant's feet, giant base, like so, the offset, what the giant I just touched, like disappears, and the offset is reduced.
Mm-hmm.
And if you touch all the giants, then you don't have any offsets, and then it's more precise, and giants actually
Yeah.
helped to find the order.
Yeah, and that was a concept that came out of some of the research at CERN. Like, the really cool thing getting to work with the physicists there and the theoreticists, especially the ones that were pretty into gaming, was that they were really keen and like willing to basically take scientifically accurate mechanics from, or scientifically accurate like details from particle physics, theoretical physics, and then help me kind of like figure out how those would work mechanically, like in the game. So this idea, it's a phrase that I kind of repeat to myself now, like as a like weird like little joke, but information does not propagate at a finite velocity was something that this one physicist studying quantum entanglement inside of black holes would tell me. His name is Matteo. He was Italian, and that basically just means that in terms of being inside of a black hole, I mean, so much is unknown, right? We know a lot about what happens outside the event horizon, but we don't really know what happens when you cross over. But there's this idea that inside of the black hole, the further away you are from each other, the more copies of yourself are visible to other people, and the more copies of other people you see. So hence the giants, like there being so many of them when you first spawn inside of the game. And then as you kind of get closer to your partner, maybe by this false project of pursuing these false selves, like you're chasing the giants, they're giants, and you're kind of gradually knocking out and you're knocking out the kind of fake copies of the other partner. And as you're knocking them out, you're getting to know that partner better. And then the giants that remain in the sky are, the motion is closer and closer to real-time copy of where your partner is going. So in a way, yeah, like exactly like John said, it is like kind of a metaphor for like getting to know another person, like the many layers that people contain,
Yeah,
and getting closer and closer to like the source.
What I actually like is we want. I mean, I think this is the direction we want into with this project, is to players to communicate. And yeah, I think it's beautiful to just see, maybe even if like strangers are playing this game, they have actually to communicate to finish the game.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something we want to encourage with this game.
Definitely. Also, like, I feel like in relationships, there's so much between like the said and unsaid, like the text and the paratext, or like the language and the paralanguage. And I think like one of the biggest inspirations for this game was thinking about how do you communicate in other ways than language. And also, you know, inside of a black hole, you can't really trust anything. Like sounds come back different. Visuals, if they even exist, we don't really know 100% because of the whole speed of light problem. We don't know like what they'd really look like. We have some ideas around this universe mirror, basically, like every image reflecting back on itself and being stored inside of that black hole. We don't really know exactly, right? So we were really interested in this game and how to kind of create a communication system between two people that is non-linguistic. And that's like how we landed on the echolocation mechanic,
Yeah.
and then also the haptics, which is kind of still in development, but actually also involves a separate level. So that's where the visuals are even more reduced. It's like a dark forest at nighttime, just like moonlit and covered in fog. And then I guess the environment designed for the volcano level came from a few different places. Some of the assets that you see here as we're walking around were actually 3D scans that I took while I was at CERN. Let me see if I can find one. All right, here we go. Here's one. So yeah, some of them just look sort of like blobby little like moldy low poly ruins, but some of them look a little more specific. There's like a mushroom floating around here somewhere. So it was kind of fun for me. Like the landscape is really inspired by like macro micro. So the idea that like something as tiny as a lichen could also make up the entire surface of this world was nice and like a fun thought experiment. I think also like thinking about edge of world spaces on our planet that feel otherworldly. So a lot of interest in ecotones, especially those in like boreal and Arctic regions. Thinking about the paradox of a volcanic landscape, something that looks totally dead, but actually has like many layers of life beneath the surface. Thinking about lichens and how kind of resilient they are, how they thrive in these in-between spaces. Thinking a lot about sinkholes as time travel. So, you know, when a chunk of the earth opens up and you get sucked down deep into the core, you're also traveling through like many millennia of geologic time, like deep time. And in a way, maybe that's the closest thing we have to understanding how time works on a scale larger than our own lives. So that was definitely another influence. Here you can see part of the mushroom from CERN. Thanks, CERN.
Oh, are you stuck?
Oh no! Oh no, I got
it.
it.
Okay.
What else to say? I think we could talk about this, the echolocation more. I would love to hear more about like the effects that you built for that, John.
I'm just waiting to find one. This one is really good. If I don't sucked in a wormhole.
Gotta be careful. Oh shit.
Yeah, we wanted something for players to communicate, but in kind of like the giants, like not in real time. And we had the idea of sending an echo, and only when you are in front of these listening ears, radar things, they kind of amplify a signal you will send to the other. And yeah, by pressing a button, you just send an echo, and the other has to wait to receive it. And when the other receives it, it's kind of like an argument between two people. The other can send an echo right after it, like kind of empty the bar. And yeah, basically on game. That's it.
No, I love how you called it an argument.
it gives the direction of where is coming, like the echo as a base, and it's expanding, so you know where the other is, like what's the direction the other is.
Yeah, exactly. The way that the particles like wash over your body, that's kind of like a current. Yeah, I mean, thinking of the argument metaphor, we were kind of thinking about that, like what it feels like when language begins to break down in relationships. And it just feels like this really obsolete technology that's no longer serving you. Like the mechanic of communication has started rusting or, breaking. becoming useless. And yeah, we were also thinking about like how to design these echo portals or echo technologies in the game. We were thinking a lot about these things called listening ears, which maybe some of people in the audience know about. They were like a sonic architecture that was built in World War I think, in the UK. Maybe it was the second one, I don't remember. But yeah, there were these kind of massive concrete shells called listening ears on the coasts near Dungeness, and they were supposed to be built so that they could pick up like supersonic sound. So actually, I think it was maybe the Japanese warplanes, so probably World War II. And anyways, they didn't really work that well. But surprise. But yeah, then they, after the war, they were decommissioned, and now they just kind of sit there as this like relic. I've actually visited them. I mean, they're kind of fenced off, but you can still get pretty close, and they're just sitting inside of this swampy landscape. They're covered in graffiti. They're full of mold and lichen. And I thought there was something so beautiful about this technology that, has kind of shed or grown out of its purpose. And now it's just kind of left to rot, or has become a kind of public art piece in some weird way. But yeah, thinking about communication and argumentation and the failure and fracture of language, how to kind of communicate that through a game artifact was like an interesting question, but kind of fits with this landscape too, I guess. I think I hid myself.
And gameplay-wise, it's just we wanted something cryptic that player would not necessarily understand how it works
Yeah.
at first. But just like the giants, the more you look at them, the more you use them, the more you understand how you should react to the input they gives you.
Yeah, I think in like my own kind of research and writing and teaching, I'm really interested in this concept of bad game feel. So like video games that are annoying to play, that are hard to play, that make you upset or frustrated or heartbroken. I mean, this is a very kind of queer kind of gesture, I guess, like loving feeling bad or like wanting to sit with the bad feeling and play with it. Like a cat and mouse. I don't know, maybe you're both the prey and the preyed in this scenario. But yeah, kind of thinking about games that don't immediately reveal themselves or even reveal themselves ever. And it's just a very different relationship you have with the game as an interface. Like if the game isn't going to reveal itself fully, if there's no way to beat it, if it's like a perma-life or a perma-death game, I guess, like games that just feel really like tough and like confusing. Kind of how that state of not knowing or bewilderment also paradoxically opens you up to not just many different ways of playing a game, but different ways of like understanding yourself inside of that game world.
Is the screen still? I see it's okay, working again. Oh, we're really close. Maybe we should talk a bit about the sound design.
Oh my god, I just saw you.
Yeah.
Do you want to be found? The merge? Should we talk about the merge?
Maybe about just the sound design. It's just very simple for now, but basically there are two tracks. One of them is kind of ambient sound, noisy wind, and another one is like this melodic track. And the more you are close to the other, the more melodic the track is gonna be. So it's another hint, but at the service of art and meaning, subtext, stuff.
I would also say my controller is racing like a heart right now. It's beating, like it's pulsing.
Yeah. Haptics, but with meaning.
Now it's just shaking all over. Yeah, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's maybe a good place for us to stop.
Should I stop the game?
Yeah, I reckon. And then if there's any Q&A for the audience, if they have any questions, we can just kind of move into that, I guess.
Well, thank you both for this beautiful love experience. I really loved the architecture within the environment you created. I also visited that space in UK. Yeah, it's exactly how you describe it, a bit distant and weird, not only in distance that you cannot really reach it unless you organize a guided tour there. But it's also very distant in technology because they were there to track zeppelins and but like you said, it's kind of a failed technology, so it's also very, in a sense, melancholic to put them there in that space. I really like that that reflection.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a huge fan of the shadows. Like they feel somehow so relevant these times, and I cannot explain why. It's a feeling. And I'm super curious to explore the world myself, and because that's difficult to capture now the meaning of these shadows while playing the game.
Yeah, they also feel a bit the shadows, I think. I don't know. Yeah, it feels a bit like a Murakami story. I think it's the Wind-Up Chronicle book. I'm not completely sure, where we are brought into different worlds, and one of these worlds is inside of the head of a character where he's stuck forever with together with his shadow, which is cut off from him. So they having a kind of a living apart together situation, and they can never reach each other. And so, yeah, for me, these shadows made me think of these characters, which are like, So it brings you, or at least me, in many worlds, let's say.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I want to add the same question as Naomi, like the bodies, what inspired the character to believe.
I guess I could start this one. I mean, I feel like, as is the case many times, like in developing, you have to have a placeholder for something, and then sometimes you just end up really liking the placeholder and you get attached to it. And that's kind of what happened here. I mean, I think from the very beginning, like John and I were, or like I was sort of freaking out about like how to create the character. I think most of the games that I've made previously are first person, so you don't normally have the character like in the round, and maybe a embodiment is less of like an issue, or it's just more of a suggestion. But we were really, this was sort of tricky because it was always gonna be third person because of like the 2-player dynamic. And we really wanted a character that wasn't too human, but also wasn't too like non-human. I mean, you know, early on we kind of wondered like what would it be like if the black hole was the playable character, or if the lichen was the playable character, but also that felt a little too flat somehow. Also, yeah, kind of impossible to imagine collisions like a black hole character. But yeah, then we ended up just using this like AI tool that was generating the characters for us, but kind of figuring out ways to maybe break the tool or confuse it. Like instead of feeding it just like one character, it would be like a crowd or like a cluster of people. So it would start trying to triangulate across these different bodies and then get really confused. And then texture-wise, the kind of goopy, slimy textures, and also the one that came out that looks almost like a rib cage, like that's like lit up from the inside. Those were actually coming from scans, like super like nanoscan resolution scans of like organic, like moss, lichen, bark, like things I was picking up at CERN, like on my way, just like walking between labs. And yeah, those actually sort of became this sort of painted like skins of the characters. So yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if John has anything else to add.
I have nothing to add from what you said, except that I kind of, when I imagined a character, like you said, which we at first it was kind of the obvious option, but maybe probably too obvious, like the black hole character and a lichen character. And I think I will always add this character in mind, actually, like a gooey lichen thing. Makes sense, I think.
We have a question from the audience.
Can you hear me right? Can you hear the question?
I no.
Come here. The audience is joining you. Hello. I was wondering which engine you used to create the game, and also where we can find the game. Is it available online to play, and is it multiplayer as I imagined, or you can play with two, or is it? Yeah, what is the platform we can find it on, if it's playable or not? And I also wondered, it was an extra question I had also in relation to the Annihilation, because I'm just now really reading the Southern Reach series of Jeff van der Meer, and I'm a huge fan of the universe. And I was wondering if you have read the books, because you refer to the movie as an aesthetic, but I feel like the Area X in the books is very different as a kind of environment. And I was wondering this, and also the like relating to the matter antimatter metaphor. I was also wondering why make a humanoid character? Why not try to yeah, so those were questions that were in my head. Why are the characters humanoid? Is that also like a developer's choice? Because that's why I was wondering about the engine, because of course making something move in Unreal Engine using a certain type of physicality that is humanoid is easier than in other engines. So that was a lot of the questions.
Yeah, so the engine is Unreal Engine 5. And about the platform is still in discussion, I think. I mean, I'm not sure if the game, Alice just told me that I'm not sure the game is going to be released on Steam. I mean, this is a question. And yeah, and the game will be playable online if it goes on Steam.
Yeah, I think it's gonna go on Steam, right, John?
Yeah.
We'll figure that one out. But it's gonna be shown. Well, it's opening next week at this place at Tabacalera, this museum in San Sebastian, in the Basque region. And then it's the kind of big premiere of the game is going to be in Copenhagen in June, which is going to be at Copenhagen Contemporary, and that's going to be like on for a few months, I reckon. And I think that probably as we kind of hinted at, like in the demo, like there's still some things under development. There's like a second level. There's like some more complex mechanics we're introducing. there's of course like all the kind of haptic feedback stuff that's really the main mechanic of the forest level. So it's going to look quite different when it's ready to go this summer. And hopefully during the summer, yeah, like in June, same time that it comes out in real life, it would also be put on Steam. But we're figuring that out right now. But odds are good. Regarding your question around Annihilation, yes, I have read the trilogy. I did not like the second one. The third one was okay. The first one's iconic. I would agree that, like, I mean, Vandermeer is from Florida, right? And the Area X is basically Florida. So I feel like the way that he describes the landscape in the book is really even more trippy, I would say, than the visuals. But I also think, who is it? Like Alex Garland who did I forget the director, right? Garland? Yeah. I mean, there was still some really nice moments in there, like visually. But yeah, I know it's different. Like obviously there's a flatness that happens when the book has to kind of fit an image, right? But I still think he did a good job. So yeah.
And about the humanoid character, I think I'll always have this vision of a humanoid character, but more of a design perspective, and how the environment is an obstacle, and also how you can relate to this character and in a love story context. I think it makes more sense.
Yes, thanks. I think we're gonna round it off. Here's no more questions, maybe online, Naomi.
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you guys for having us. This has kind of been our first playtest of the game in public space. So
Exciting.
share with you.
Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
showing a work in progress, because it's also not.
Yeah.
And it worked out very well, I think, except for the sound didn't came through very well. So still something we can be surprised when it comes out.
True. Yeah. Sounds good. Cool. Well, yeah, thanks for having us, and thanks for letting us close out the day 2. I hope the rest of the events were awesome, and yeah. Thanks again.
Okay. Thank you, Alice, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And yeah, speak online.
Sounds great. My favorite. Bye.